Good evening and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. I hope you're doing all okay. We have ended the pre-season period of the NFL and we are rolling very fast towards the start of the NFL season, but will come this weekend. Very, very exciting indeed. Lots to talk about tonight. And obviously we've got more of our shows coming out this week. The college show returns tomorrow. We'll also have a divisional preview show as well as some shows over the weekend. It is a very exciting time to be watching the Franchise Tag, whether it be you listening to it or watching us on YouTube. And make sure you keep liking and subscribing to all our bits and bobs that we have going on. Adam and Johnny are back with me once again, and we're going to go straight into the big business in Dallas, as this episode is called. And we're going to be talking about focusing on the Dallas Cowboys. And firstly, we're going to be focusing on Ceedee Lamb and the new contract we just got announced in the last few days. And then we'll be talking about Dak Prescott and everything else to do with Dallas Cowboys moving forward. So Ceedee Lamb, 4-year extension. Adam, 136 million deal, 100 mil guaranteed. He is now the second highest annual salary for a wide receiver at 34 mil a year, which is one behind Justin Jefferson at the Minnesota Vikings, who's on 35, so only $1 million to play with there. Since drafting in 2020 from Alabama, 5,145 yards, 32 touchdowns for the wide receiver. And a receiver I think everyone knew was going to be decent in this league, but I don't think they really realized the heights that he was going to reach, considering that draft class of wide receivers that we had when he came in.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot, wasn't there? And so obviously it's he wasn't necessarily the main guy of that group at the time. So but he's done really, really well. And he's shown that he is the guy in Dallas, and that he deserves to be paid. It's been a bit of a long-winded agreement. This one, it's been going on for quite a long time, but yeah. I mean, it's about time. If they want to be able to do anything, then they need to pay guys like Ceedee Lamb in order to be able to get anywhere. Like you say, we'll talk about the whole sort of the Cowboys and where they are as a whole a bit later, but it is something that they needed to do. And, we've got a guy here who I believe he was the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver last year when it comes to the stats and his yards and touchdowns and all of that. So, I mean, these guys deserve to be paid. Like you say, Jefferson's been paid. Tyreek Hill seems that the Dolphins are just throwing money at Tyreek Hill. So it's he deserves it. I think he's done well, and he's it's a good thing for him, and it's a good thing for the Cowboys in general.
I mean, there was a time, Johnny, where this offense ran through Ezekiel Elliott, and that has really sort of now transferred into the hands of Ceedee Lamb rather than the legs of Zeke, I suppose, with that transition. And really, this offense does tick all the way through Lamb's productivity, doesn't it? I mean, he's been splendid to watch year on year for the Dallas Cowboys, and it really sort of lives and dies by him in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with that. I think, Ceedee Lamb has quite steadily, I think, progressed since he came into the league. But last year, stats-wise, he was, he amassed the most receptions, had, I think, just under 1,800 yards. I think this year he is going in as the number 1 wide receiver. Obviously Justin Jefferson coming off an injury hit year, sticky situations regarding Jamar Chase and Brandon Ayuk. Obviously, we think those will get solved. But yeah, Ceedee Lamb, I think, it's obviously very well deserving, and it's a really good thing for the Cowboys. I know we'll get onto it, talking about what this means for their other players. But clearly, I think this is certainly on social media and talking. Obviously, Micah Parsons on his own podcast, congratulated Ceedee Lamb and said how big of a deal it is to not just obviously keeping him around, but he's obviously such a lethal weapon for the Cowboys. And this is exactly the sort of thing that the Cowboys need after a disappointing end to last year. You mentioned Ezekiel Elliott coming back. There's question marks, I suppose, around the rest of the offense, even at wide receiver. Outside of Lamb, there's not incredible depth, but that just goes to show just how big of an asset Lamb is, and I expect him to go even further. Hopefully, push towards the 2,000-yard mark this year, because he's obviously going to be amassing a lot of receptions as he was last year.
Do we think it's a bit surprising though that he didn't get above Jefferson or the same as Jefferson?
I think when you're in the ballpark of them players, you are. I mean, some of these players are driven by they want to be the number one in the category, don't they? And I think he definitely wants that for himself. But the fact that he's in and around that, I think, still makes him sort of worthy of a top wide receiver status, I suppose. It's weird because I think this is due to my bias and my weird innate just not interested in the Cowboys at all. It's always weird for me to sort of see Ceedee as being a top wide receiver. And I know that's really stupid, but
I completely agree. I think he is. I think a little bit underrated. I think last year he was clearly the best wide receiver out there. But Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, they from day one. I'm not saying Ceedee Lamb wasn't fantastic in his his early years, but from day one it was clear they were going to get these mega deals. Obviously, Jefferson has them. So I don't know. Is he still underrated despite clearly being right on the top of the wide receiver list?
Yeah. What do you reckon, Adam? Do you think he's?
I think now he probably isn't. It kind of feels almost like by doing what he did last year, it does kind of like push him up into that upper echelon of wide receivers. I think the fact that, as you said earlier, Fred, it's like it used to be the Zeke show, and obviously them legs are knackered now, and it's like last year everything had to go through Lamb. Is I know they had a few other. They do have other weapons. They've got like Jake Ferguson, who at tight end has done pretty well for them last year and stuff like that. But the fact is that the number one read every single time was Lamb. So I do feel like he is the main guy there now, and that kind of gives him that sort of upper echelon in the same way that Jefferson, Jefferson hasn't got the Vikings to a Super Bowl, has he? I mean, it's they've kind of done similar things in their career now. And I think after last year, that kind of, shows that he's very, very capable, and that I think that people probably do think of him as a top tier guy now. I just think maybe he's still young, isn't he? Whereas for like not so much Jefferson, but certainly someone like Tyreek Hill, who's been there and done it for many years, I think he probably gets more. And even like someone like Cooper Kupp, who has struggled with injuries and hasn't been around as much, kind of feels like he's got more reputation purely because he's been there a lot longer. I wonder if maybe in a couple of years' time, if Lamb continues to do this in the same way that them guys have, then maybe he will get a little bit more as well. But for me, I look at him as though he's one of the top, probably it's Lamb, it's Hill, and it's Chase, isn't it, really? And I mean, not so much this year for Jefferson because of who his quarterback is, but Jefferson, they're the top 4 wide receivers. So, yeah, I think that, to me, that they're pretty equal.
Well, this then obviously poses a big question within Dallas, because Dak Prescott, their quarterback, is coming to the end of his deal, of his $160 million deal with the Cowboys. And the question is obviously, will they re-sign him? Will they be able to keep him? Will they have enough money? Will they have enough funds? I mean, they've got Ceedee Lamb now tied up in a huge contract. Trayvon Diggs, the cornerback, in a huge contract as well. Their right tackle, Terrence Steele, is also on big money. It is noted that DeMarcus Lawrence, Brandon Cooks, and Zach Martin, who are on big contracts, they are also up at the end of 2024 as well. So, Johnny, I'm going to go to you firstly on this. I mean, are you surprised with how much it was under the microscope about Dak's contract, and the first time around anyway, that hasn't really been addressed or sort of the ball started rolling on that. I am going to, while you'll do that, check on my house because I heard the loudest bang a second ago, and I'm just worried for something in my house went bang. So I'll leave you to it. I can pick up. I'll keep my headphones on to be able to hear you, but I will leave you to sort of give your side of the argument, I suppose, in the Dak Prescott
definitely. I think really unsure about what's going to happen, because I think this deal makes it seem more likely that Dak Prescott will get re-signed. But they have obviously another pressing issue with Micah Parsons, who will probably be up there as becoming the biggest, best played defensive player of all time when he finally gets his contract. From what I've seen, the deal for Lamb seems to have boosted Dak Prescott's chances, but I can really see a scenario where there will be a parting of ways between the two sides. It's really interesting. I can't see Micah Parsons leaving the Cowboys. I just feel he has more value, I think, to Jerry Jones than Dak Prescott in terms of, I don't know, relationship that we've, I think, come to assume between, or how Jones feels sometimes about Prescott. It's really interesting. I can see a situation where this rumbles on, and Dak Prescott perhaps is looking for a new team in 2025. It's a really weird thing to say because, why would you pay your wide receiver without committing to your quarterback? But it's going to be really difficult to keep all the stars around, given the contracts that you mentioned, Freddie. I just feel that Parsons is the one that is going to be the one staying along long term. I'm not sure if I've made that sound clearly in myself, because it just sounds so crazy that we're even contemplating. But I'm not sure what Dak Prescott's future holds after this absolute mega buster of a contract for Lamb.
I mean, he's 73, 40, and 41, 29,459 yards, 202 touchdowns, 74 interceptions for his career. 3-time Pro Bowler. He was obviously the offensive rookie of the year when he came in under Tony Romo. Obviously got forced into that position as well. Adam, at this point, doesn't he deserve an extension? I mean, I know they haven't had successful playoff runs. They haven't gone to the promised land, but I would say that this team has had holes on it a lot of the time that Dak's been there, and they have drafted to fill that, Ceedee and Micah Parsons and Diggs and players like that, and they have built out the roster, and they've had a very strong offensive line that whole time as well, though it has been a little bit injury laden on occasion. But he's 73 and 41. He's a winning quarterback. He always looks good. I know he's had a couple of injury issues at times, but I mean, has he done much wrong to not deserve?
It's a proper conundrum, isn't it? It really is, this one, because he kind of it does come across as though he's a bit of a stats padder. When it comes to really winning the game and winning the game that you need him to do in the playoffs and stuff like that, he tends to falter, and that's where the problem comes in. It feels, I mean, I know that he's not, although given last year, you could argue the same with someone like Tua. See, Tua was a little bit, he had the most yards. He did throw for not a decent amount of touchdowns and a few more interceptions than Dak. But he did okay. But it did kind of feel like once you reach that point of where it really mattered, he kind of faltered a little bit. Dak kind of feels very similar in that respect. Now, we had conversations regarding Tua in the past when it came to the draft and also afterwards, where it was a little bit like, should they go out and get someone else? Should they be paying this guy lots of money? It kind of feels quite a similar thing in a way, where it's almost like we've got another guy here who his contract is basically up very soon, and it's about, do you pay him, do you not? It feels like for most teams, it would be crazy to throw him away. Like to throw Dak away now would seem very odd. You know, he went for over 4,500 yards last year. He had 36 touchdowns. Do you really want to throw that away? I mean, you know, there's not many that beat that in last year's one. He had a very good season. Yes, it's kind of built. The whole team is built to pass rather than to run now a little bit more. But it just kind of feels like, yes, he probably does deserve the contract. He has put out some good performances. Does he get you to a Super Bowl? Probably not. And so it's really that weird kind of dichotomy that teams have where it's like, what do you do? Do you decide to go down the route of going for a brand new, fresh guy? But I mean, you could have someone who's like not very good. I mean, you look at like what they've got at the moment. Trey Lance is not the answer, is he? Clearly. So it's like they don't really have anything behind him, and you could try and draft someone, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work out as we see with the likes of Trey Lance at the 49ers. So it's a really difficult one. I think he probably does. I think he's probably got your best chance at the moment of getting you where you are at the moment, but money-wise, it's very difficult to balance these books.
I do worry as well, as you know, the longer this goes on. Well, clearly, I don't think this will get solved, or Dak's contract situation will get solved before the end of before the start of the season, and then you're into really risky territory. You know, Dak's not got the best injury record. You know, I certainly do believe that the situation. You know, he's the best man for the job at this time. Probably will be at the start of next year. But if there's money issues, there's potential, you know, on the field issues. You know, both playing performance and potential injuries. Next year when he's out of contract, I'm sure big teams, you know, other teams will be willing to pay him probably a lot more money than the Cowboys can. Yeah, it's not ideal. I don't think if the you know his contract isn't solved in the next few weeks.
I would love to go back to a point that you made a second ago in your statement there, Johnny, but I'm going to roll with this first, and we'll move back to that in a moment. But it isn't similar, but it is sort of similar with what the Steelers situation was. However, we had age rather than contract issues with Big Ben, and my frustration was the lack of preparedness of it.
Yeah,
and it's sort of the same for the Cowboys. I mean, you know, their quarterback drafting has been pretty poor. I mean, the last first round quarterback they took was Troy Aikman in 1989. Since 2000, in 01, they took Quincy Carter in the second round. In 03, they got Tony Romo. That was an undrafted free agent. Admittedly, you know, the upside of that was phenomenal. They did very, very well with Romo under the helm. 2009, they bring in, is it Stephen or Stephen? I think it's Stephen McGee in the fourth round. They get Dak in the fourth round in 2016. Obviously, profiting-wise, that's done well as well. Mike White in 2018 in the fifth round, and Ben DiNucci in the seventh round in 2020. So it's not like they've, you know, when you look at a situation like Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers in the Packers, you know, it may have not felt like a great decision at the time, but there was that preparedness. They knew that the contract was going to be running out, and they knew it may ruffle some feathers as well. But it feels to me, Johnny, and that they are doing that lack of preparedness thing again as well here, because they must be now considering signing him, because they have really got no one if that goes right.
You are right. I mean, you know, the Steelers, perfect example of, you know, a team that's great everywhere, but at quarterback, and obviously that came back to bite them when they were very much, you know, middle in the road, needed a new quarterback, and had to take a punt on Kenny Pickett. And, you know, for Cowboys fans, that'd be the worst situation if they are, you know, picking or having, you know, a decent year this year, which, you know, I think we're all expecting them to be right up there. But then if they have to go out and get a new quarterback, the free agents available next year, other than Dak, I think Sam Darnold's your best option. The quarterback class next year, you're not going to get, you know, a top talent, I don't think, with one of the later first round picks. So yeah, they've got a real conundrum. You know, obviously it's great that they've got They've sealed down possibly their best asset in Ceedee Lamb. They've obviously got a lot of other assets across the board. A really, really strong team. It's just that quarterback question. I think we're all in agreement that Dak's probably the best person to take them forward at this stage. There's just so many other question marks around money, other players. It's a really, really sticky situation, I think, for Dak. Especially as we go into the season, and his future still fairly up in the air.
I've got like 4 different questions in my brain. I can't really decide which one I want to go to, but I think I'm going to leave the whole, if they'll theoretically pick it at like 21, who realistically in the draft might be there, because that would be obviously Adam's sort of forte. Maybe I'll look more at the other side of, if Dak doesn't get signed and is allowed to walk away, how popular do you think he is in the market for other teams, or what teams do you expect to be maybe sniffing around him?
I mean, someone will take him, definitely. There's no way that he doesn't get a job. As I said, you look at what he did last year. I'd be shocked if someone doesn't go for that. I mean, there's so many teams that, quarterback-wise have struggled over the years. I mean, you could... I know, like... and you think about it, the Vikings have just brought in JJ McCarthy, but what happens if it doesn't work with the injuries and stuff like that? You've no idea. The Raiders seem like an obvious choice, given what they've got. It's not exactly, Gardner Minshew and O'Connell are not great. Who knows what's going to happen with your Steelers? Obviously, with what's happening with them too. I mean, it's always one that you could throw out there.
If the Giants weren't so
the Giants, Daniel Jones, it all goes. I mean, that would be quite the turnaround, wouldn't it, from the Cowboys to the Giants? That'd go down well. There's a few. I mean, there's some young quarterbacks that we don't really know if they're going to be good enough or not at the moment. Obviously, they've done well at college, but that doesn't mean they're going to be good enough in the NFL. So, every team that's taken on the
Patriots sticks out for me on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Drake May a lot of people said that he was very good in the last preseason game, but it was going up against number 2s and stuff like that. If he doesn't do great, who knows? You kind of feel like it's got to be a team that wants to try and win now, though. And I feel like maybe the Patriots might be a few years off of that. But yeah, I mean, the Raiders does feel like a kind of like an obvious one, I have to say.
What about you, Johnny? What do you reckon? Who do you reckon could be something?
Well, I think before, it sounds a bit rogue, but before Tua signed his deal, I was very, up in the air whether, that was going to happen. And in my head, I was like, I could see Dak Prescott, potentially ended up at the Dolphins next year. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But yeah, if this turns out to be Aaron Rodgers' last year in the NFL, the Jets will certainly be beyond that. Again, don't think that's probably going to happen. I think it'll be one of those teams like the Raiders, the Steelers that you two both mentioned. But there's certainly a lot of teams that not just in need of the quarterback, but need an upgrade at quarterback. And I think Prescott, who is probably top 10 quarterback in the league, especially after such a good year, albeit with a bad ending. I think most teams, if you don't have your quarterback for the next 5-10 years, then I think you would definitely take the call to Dak to come on and just really provide an upgrade.
Right, well, we'll put the Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys to bed, and we'll move on to another topic momentarily. Again, make sure you check out our shows that are coming out all this weekend. Will be coming out for you directly through the season. We've put loads of content out in the last few days in regard to the Island game, of which saw Georgia Tech college team beat the Florida State Seminoles. Gareth and Alex were over there. They did a phenomenal job. whilst they're over there getting loads of content, chatting to fans, chatting to other people within the media. We like to thank all the guys over there who we got to talk to, and all the people that watched our content over that time as well. You know, it feels very soon that Dublin's going to be a setting for an NFL game in the regular season. Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, are definitely going to be the ones that are going to be there. I don't think that's a spoiler by no means. So yeah, that's really, really great. And you know, we're going to do a lot more events, the London games, Germany games, coming up in the season. Fortunately, we won't be in Sao Paulo for the Eagles Packers game as much as maybe Adam and Gareth would like to be there, as their two teams collide in South America for the first time, which should be great fun. But talking about the bigger picture, and we're going to talk about teams that we believe that missed out on the playoffs last season, but maybe in the playoffs this season. So that does tend to happen quite a lot. We don't really get the same playoff teams year on, year out. You get the same cornerstone ones like the Chiefs and the Eagles and teams like that, but tend to go to it very regularly. But a lot of the lower tier teams that are in the wild card do tend to be different year on year. So the only rule with this is they can't have gone to the playoffs last year. It doesn't mean they can't have been to the playoffs anyway at any given point. So Adam, I'll go to you first. What team do you think may sneak in with a playoff chance this year?
Yeah, so mine's a bit of a boring one. I think most people would go for this one. The Atlanta Falcons for me. I think it feels like they're now in a position where the big problem they had last year was the lack of quarterback. That was what I think a lot of people were most concerned about. Obviously, the likes of Tyler Heineke is not there anymore, or Desmond Ridder. And what they've gone for Kirk Cousins, who looks like he's fully fit. From what we've seen of the preseason, he seems like he says he's fully fit, he's raring to go, and that kind of quarterback is really what I think they need in order to be able to get themselves into the playoffs. He's been in the playoffs many times before with the Vikings. He's done very well in that respect, and so I think that having that leadership there as a quarterback is probably what they have really been missing. I think not only that obviously they've got some great weapons that we kind of knew anyway, with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, of course, at running back. So the offense looks quite strong at the moment. They've even brought Darnell Mooney in, who, like, as a number two, isn't a bad guy to bring in. Now, the one area, and when we did our NFC South preview, Fred, the thing that concerned me the most was the defense. It just didn't feel like it was strong enough or had enough on it. And one massive thing that we came up with during the draft process was that they needed an edge rusher. They have done that since we did the preview, bringing out.
They pretty much did everything that we said they should probably do.
Yeah. So, I mean, bringing in someone like Matthew Judon again in the same kind of way as Kirk Cousins, actually, it kind of brings that experience as well as just someone who's going to get the results that they need to. Really like him. Think he's been great most of his career, and he's going to be pretty good for them. I'll be shocked if he isn't. And then also bringing in Justin Simmons as well. And, you know, you start looking at these things, you start going that they've paid AJ Terrell. You know, it's kind of like they're getting their captains, so to speak, in specific areas on that defense. And all of a sudden, that defense that kind of let them down a little bit last year, it wasn't overly fantastic. Suddenly looks like it's got a few guys on it that's going to make a real difference for them. Not only that, they're in a division that really isn't going to be that hard to win, I don't think. When you look at the teams that are in it, they're not fantastic. You know, the Bucks are going to probably be their hardest competition in this one. They've got some unknowns as well, in the fact that they've lost their OC. And he was supposed, Dave Canales, the quarterback whisperer, obviously has gone. And so that could be an issue for Baker. You've got Carolina, which obviously have got, are not really in that position. Although I think they'll do a lot better than last year, they're not really in the position to start looking at getting into the playoffs, I don't think. And then the New Orleans Saints with Dennis Allen, who just depresses me most of the time, to be brutally honest, in the way that he talks about his players and coaches football teams. So, I think that there's not a great amount of competition. I think they've got themselves a team now that kind of feels like they've gone a bit all in. I think that's probably fair to say with the players that they've brought in now. And I mean, they've got an upgrade at their coaching, they've got an upgrade at their quarterback, they've got an upgrade on the defense, and they only really missed out by a few games last year anyway. So I'm going to go for them.
Well, no Desmond Ridder at all anymore. He's been cut today, along with a lot of other players that are being cut as we speak while we're doing this. Funnily enough, on a sidebar thing, after Andrew said that Isaiah Hodgins would be the big backup, he has been cut as well by the New York Giants. So that's just a little inside thing on what is happening on our WhatsApp group at the minute between a few of us. I think you're right. And you know what's funny? If Kirk goes down, but people worried about that, Michael Penix is right behind. And we're all very excited to see what Michael Penix can do as well. Do you think, Johnny, that some of these players on this team is a bit of a prove-it year for them as well? Players like Carl Pitts, for example, who had such big hype coming into this. AJ Terrell is seen as one of the best cornerbacks, but not the best cornerback in the league. Judon has been at the heights of being one of the best edge rushers. Can he stick to that level? I suppose Bijan Robinson had a great start of the year last year, but it did sort of peter out. He wants to probably have a big boom this year as well. Do you think there's sort of a bit of a chip on the shoulder for some of these players? Kirk as well, he's been turned away by the Vikings after another team that's turned him away after the Commanders also got rid of him as well. It's sort of a chip on the shoulder sort of team, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think Kurt's arrival, obviously it's been a while off season for them, the pick for Penix, however you judge that. But they've obviously clearly massively improved in the one position that they needed to. They've now got obviously Kirk, who's we know how much he can help the team, whether regardless of whether he's coming off the back of a big injury, and then Penix as well. I'm sure they will be a huge upgrade on the likes of Tyler Heineke and Desmond Ridder. So I think the players like Kyle Pitts, Drake London, I think Bijan Robinson will come into his own last year. I think from what we saw of him, the limited I suppose resource that he had around him and the situations he was put in. I mean, he was just in the London game. The hospital passes that Desmond Ridder was chucking at him, and he was able to get out of those sort of situations. He's going to come on leaps and bounds, and I'm convinced of that. So, I think there is a general feel-good factor. The Falcons have gone all in, and I think as Adam mentioned, the probably the best thing about it is how poor the rivals are around them. They've got a relatively good schedule, which should put them in good stead to get to the playoffs. With I don't want to say with ease, but they should be the NFC South champions at the end of the year, given how much I think they've improved. And not saying that the rivals haven't improved, but I think there is clear daylight because of who they have now at quarterback. They should be a good pick to make the playoffs.
Well, moving forward, who's your team on the flip side of it? Obviously, you can't go the Atlanta Falcons, so it's your turn to pick.
Well, I was thinking, I really wanted to be, want to be cliche with my pick. I didn't want to go for a team like the Jets or the Jaguars. I was really trying to convince myself to go with someone really rogue, and the Arizona Cardinals were a team that I was like, okay, they've made some improvements here this year. I quite liked watching them last year. They were a team who were on paper absolutely dreadful, and just looking at it now, they had the worst defense in the league. They have made some improvements. I'm talking myself out of picking them because obviously they're in a much more difficult position, I think, to a team like the Falcons. But just from their improvements, I think they'll be a team that will massively improve. They are in a difficult position to, obviously they've got the 49ers in their division who have Super Bowl aspirations, of course. But I don't see them as being too dissimilar to, the Seattle Seahawks and perhaps even the LA Rams. I really do think that, the additions, particularly with Marvin Harrison, can really help them to transform in terms of, the passing game. Obviously, they've added the likes of Trey Benson, another weapon, and they've got young studs now on offensive line. I think that's a real area that needs to improve. But yeah, I think this is a team that will hopefully grow. Obviously, last year was a full clean out of dead weight, resourcing for the future. I'm saying this, I don't think they will make the playoffs, but I think there will be, a team that's that come on leaps and bounds. I think my other team would be the Indianapolis Colts. I think Shane Steichen last year showed how good of an offensive mind he is. And yeah, I think they can really come on. If Anthony Richardson can keep healthy for a year, they've obviously signed Michael Pittman to a big contract. He's going to be, I think again, massively improve as Richardson arm game improves. They've added weapons as well with Mitchell, and let's see how Josh Downs can get on this year. We know how good their D line is. I think it's about the secondary that needs to, the young players need to make improvements. But again, they're in a quite an open division. I think, the Texans are clearly the favourites, but yeah, I can see the Colts making a good case to get into the offseason this year if they continue on the trajectory that they were in 2023.
So you've basically done a complete U-turn on what you started out with, right? So you went, I'm going to go the Arizona Cardinals.
I can't be on record saying the Cardinals made the playoffs because they're just going to do a classic and finish dead last with 2 wins probably. So I'm trying to just clear my own back, really.
You're clearing your conscience, basically. You didn't want to lie to our viewers and listeners across the franchise. I have to admit, when you said the Cardinals prior to this, I was like, it's going to be interesting to hear his argument. It turns out it wasn't an argument, really, to be honest. Really. You felt the Colts was the winner of the argument. I would definitely believe your Colts a lot more than the Cardinals, for sure. I think the Cardinals, I just think, are a step away. I don't think they've done enough on defense to strengthen it. I agree with you. Marvin Harrison coming in is obviously a huge bonus. We said it on our preview show. I didn't know if I believed that he would change the course for this team. However, Adam rebutted with that he definitely will change the course of his team because he is just that good. And I do like the addition of Trey Benson as well. And also Trey McBride was just a stud in the end of the season last year, and he was really good. But I would have to admit, even though I was part of what was one of the most dreadful games I've ever seen, and the most dreadful game I've ever seen live in Germany with the Colts Patriots game, I think you're right. If Anthony Richardson can stay healthy the whole year, which is a big if and a big but, I suppose, as well, then this team's sky is the limits, really. Jonathan Taylor, if he can stay fit as well for the whole, it's about being fit, isn't it, on this Colts team? I mean, when you've got Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, who's sort of, it fits in that Ceedee Lamb bracket for me, where I'm like, I'm not sure if you're all that great. Like, he's good, but like, I don't know. I don't get dragged to the screen to watch the Colts, and therefore I don't see Pittman as that sort of stud wide receiver, I suppose. But his numbers and his capability clearly shows that as well. But I just don't know. I'm a big eye test guy, and I don't know if he always passes the eye test, unfortunately. But this defense is also good for the Colts. They've got some good players there. They've been able to retain some good players over the years. And again, you talk about openness of division with the Falcons. Like, the openness of the division with the Colts is a lot more open, I think, than it would be for the Cardinals, say, in that NFC West over there. I think the 49ers and the Rams are sort of locked on to be able to progress through to the playoffs this year. And I think the Seahawks would probably pick the Cardinals as well. So yeah, I think the Colts. What do you reckon, Adam? Obviously, I know eyebrows were raised when he said the Cardinals prior to the show, but now we're talking about the Colts. So what do you think about the Colts?
When it comes to the Colts, I think that they don't really need to do much more in order to become a playoff team, to be honest. I mean, they went 9-8 last year. I thought that they were okay on the offense and the defense. They were pretty average when you look at the stats last year. But obviously, they lost Anthony Richardson for a long time. The big issue with this is so much does depend on Richardson, and he is someone who could get injured. And not only everyone sort of goes down the injury route, but it's not just about the injury route. It's also the fact that I think I read somewhere he's played 17 games since high school. You know, that's not a lot of games. Yeah. He's played very few games, and it's like that's a big issue. I mean, Jaden Daniels has played like 55.
How did he get drafted?
Well, because he's just a bit of a unicorn, isn't he? With his sort of like his rushing ability and stuff like that. So he hadn't played a lot really. When you look at his stats, it's very it's much lower than what you think it is, and so there is a bit of a concern in that respect as well. It's like there just isn't much experience, and I think that was something that we spoke about, the lack of experience when he was drafted. So. That's the concern. So much of this relies on Anthony Richardson and him staying fit and him being able to deliver in the NFL. And so that's the thing that's kind of a bit scary. I think the defense will continue to be a very solid defense. Love Leatu Latu at edge. Thought he was the best edge rusher easily in the draft for me. I think they've got some great wide receiver options. Michael Pittman, I think he is a good wide receiver. I don't think he's Ceedee Lamb standard at all, but I think he's a decent wide number one for a team. They brought in Adonai Mitchell, who I think could do very well as well. So that's good. I just think there are. The problem with the Colts is it's the same old story. They're a very solid team, but they're nothing sort of special. And that's what kind of always sort of makes you think that, can they make the playoffs? Yeah, they probably could if everything goes right, but they're not going to do anything more than that. They kind of feel a little bit one and done at the moment.
Can you show a tiny bit of love for the Cardinals just with a couple of minutes left on the clock?
I love everything that the Cardinals did in the offseason. I thought that what the Cardinals did was great. They brought in loads of really good players. Obviously, Marvin Harrison's going to be excellent for them. Massive improvement. Got a lot younger, which was important as well. I think the D line will improve with Darius Robinson there. And
I feel like a big but is coming.
Well, they're not going to win anything this year. That's the part. They're in a tough division. It's a really tough division, and I must admit, I put a thing out. I put some betting stuff out every now and then, and I put a betting thing out, and got a couple of people come out and say to me, "Oh, what about the Seahawks?" And I don't really see it for the Seahawks to win that division. I must admit, I feel like the 49ers and the Rams are a cut above, and then the Seahawks and I just kind of feel like the Cardinals are just even further down on that at the moment. It feels like it's a 2-3 year thing for the Cardinals. They've brought in all these young players, and the idea is in, say, like a couple of years' time, they're going to be looking at competing then. Because as you said, the defense, it has made improvements, but nothing significant that's really going to put them over the top at the moment. And the offense has made some really good improvements as well. But again, it doesn't have the depth. It's got basically two really good targets in Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. Couple of good. I think Trey Benson will be good as a running back. James Conner will continue to be good because he always is. And Kyler Murray, I think, will be good as well because he looks like he's fit and he's got some weapons. So I think he'll be really exciting. They're going to be a very exciting team to watch this year.
It feels like he's playing a bit more motivated than kind of this year. With them weapons. Right, Adam, Johnny, thank you both for joining me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching or listening. Make sure you follow us on all social media channels on YouTube as well, Spotify, the works. Again, thank you for everyone who chatted to us in Ireland, in Dublin. It was really, really phenomenal time for Gareth and Alex, and long may days like that continue. It's heating up now. End of the week, football is officially, properly, ultimately back. And we'll see you again very soon.